And now let me please invite Andy with his first presentation. Andy, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andy. I work as an engineer here at GoodData for almost 3 years. And I want to tell you about my experience integrating generative AI, basically large language model, OpenAI, that kind of things into GoodData, the POC that I did for that. And that is me. And that's the bread and butter of mine, the technologies that I'm mostly working on. You can see that I'm pretty much a purebred front-end developer. I work with TypeScript, React, Node.js, Angular, in some previous experience, Python, C# and PHP. And you can imagine my confusion when I returned from vacation on a nice sunny day in September, and my manager tells me, "Hey, we need you to build a chat with AI capabilities." So I was thinking like, all right, so I guess I'm learning AI now. But luckily there is OpenAI with their very nice REST API, so I was saved. And basically, the technologies that you can see here, even a small subset of them, is more than enough to build a chat with natural language capabilities. And that's exactly what I did. Basically, I created 2 POCs. The first one was this smaller window. It's basically a helper for analyzing your data. You can ask it analytical questions like, what was the average order summary of last month or something like that, and it will answer, and you can even create charts with that. And the second one was the dashboard creator, where you can talk about dashboards with AI, and it will help you to structure dashboard, and you can iterate over it and so on. So that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to share with you, the experience. How did I build it, and what the takeaways that I have out of it. So the application itself is quite simple. It's built with React, Redux, and Redux Saga. Very simple UI for React. You have a space where you can see the messages and the input field. The Redux is used as a state machine to hold all the message history, and then there is a Redux Saga to basically talk to OpenAI. And the first message there is always some sort of a system prompt that you can tell with which you can tell to OpenAI the context, what it needs to know about the system, about the workspace, what kind of database you have there, what kind of tables, and so on, because we're building an analytical solution here. And imagine this simple scenario. User asks a question: what is the average product price per product category? And it's just added to the Redux store. Of course, React immediately renders it in the messages, and then the whole message stack is sent to OpenAI together with some metadata, the functions that OpenAI can call from our application. Basically, how it works is that OpenAI doesn't have access to our database, right? It cannot just go and calculate the product price or slice it by product category. It doesn't have the access. But it can ask us. We can tell it, okay, you have this number of functions for aggregation, for chart creation, and so on, and you can use that to request this data from us. And that's exactly what OpenAI does. In this case, it asks us to aggregate data for it. It provides some arguments to the function, like what exactly, which facts exactly it needs. It is added as another message, and Redux Saga again comes in and makes the request to GoodData server for the data. GoodData server responds with the data. We add it to the stack of messages, and again send the whole the whole conversation back to OpenAI. Now, OpenAI API is completely stateless, which means that every time you make a request, you need to send the whole history of messages, and it's basically reading through the messages and one by one, and then generates response out of this. So it again reads that user asks for that. It reads, okay, so I already asked for this data, and hey, this is the data that was returned to me. And this time it responds, since it already have all the data needed, responds with the text message that is replied to the user that user sees in the UI. And you can see that technically there is a lot of things happening under the hood to make this happen, especially if you're just using Frontend for the whole application. But if you split it into these three sort of things, the UI, the store, and then some sagas, it's actually quite simple. You just need a very simple sagas, you need a very simple store, and you need a very simple UI. And that's what we did in GoodData. That's how we tested some ideas of what AI could look like integrated into our product. Of course, for productization, this is not enough. For productization, you would need to move a lot of this logic to server. You would need to take care of security and performance, which is not possible with purely front-end application. You might want to use some newer APIs. OpenAI just recently released Assistant API. It's still in beta, and it helps you to reduce the boilerplate. It basically stores the state for you, the list of messages for you, and so on. So it makes things much easier if you just want to quickly prototype stuff. And then there are some techniques that are prevalent in open source LLMs, not really OpenAI, but other, that help you make this whole LLM, this whole chatbot experience more consistent, make sure that it returns good results every time. So retrieval augmented generation is basically a replacement for function calls. Instead of OpenAI deciding which function to call and then generating the response based on that, you first decide with maybe smaller LLM or some even heuristic logic what user actually wants, and only provide to OpenAI a subset of that information, and then it will just convert it to a human readable response. So there are a lot of techniques. I will not go too much into details here because it's for front-end developers, and this is more like for some data scientists and backend guys. So we can skip on that. And before I continue to the outcomes for these POCs, I want to explain a little bit what large language model is and how it works, because it's important. It has an implication on when and how you can use that. So is it magic? Not really. If you have the task for a large language model, something like the quick brown fox jumps over a lazy dog, thank you. And yeah, if you ask the OpenAI to finish this phrase for you, how will it approach it? First, it will split the phrase into tokens, basically do the tokenization. By the way, this is the real split. I used OpenAI to do this. And in this case, it splits every word as a separate token. Sometimes it's more like one word per few tokens. But nevertheless, then it converts it to the token IDs. That's what the large language model works with. And you can see here one interesting thing. You can see that the and the, it's the same word for us, right? But OpenAI translates it into a completely different set of IDs, because it's one is starts with the uppercase letter, another with a smaller case letter, and there is a space in front of the second one. So for OpenAI, it's basically two completely different words. And how it works is that it reads these tokens and tries to predict what is the most likely next token in this sequence. That's all it does. It doesn't know anything about foxes or dogs and how one jumps over another. It's just based on all the information that it read. It basically read the internet. It predicts what is the next token, and then next, and then next, and then next, until it thinks that it's done. And then you basically convert it back from token IDs to the actual textual tokens, and that's how you get the response. And my point here with all this lead in is that for OpenAI, this can be a very valid, very good response, because it doesn't do 2 plus 2. It does token 2, token plus, token 2, token equal. What is the next most likely token that is going to be after that? Yeah, in 99.99%, it will probably answer 4, because that's what internet says, most of the internet messages out there, websites. But it might happen that you have your prompt, your question to OpenAI set in some very specific, peculiar way, and it will decide that that one website that is trolling you and telling you 2 plus 2 is more relevant for this question than all the other internet, and it will just respond to you that it's 5. Because it doesn't care, it just takes what is the most likely. And that is, it has the big implications for us as a developers to integrate large language models into our system. We can never rely on them to do some logical stuff, to do some calculations. It's a tool to understand human language. It's a tool to generate some nice new content and suggest it to user, not to like do the right operation and update your database, but suggest the thing to the user. And then I have a few takeaways from this POC, something that we are going to be using when we are actually productizing AI in GoodData. First, users' trust is very hard to earn. You know that OpenAI and ChatGPT, they have this stigma that they very often hallucinate and they tell you stuff that is not real. And you need to give user an option to validate the results right away. So they are very sure what is the response that they are given is the correct one. In this example, how we do it in our POC is that you have this I button, and when you click on it, it will tell you which exactly facts from the database, which database column pretty much it was using to make this calculation. So you can quickly check, okay, yeah, it makes sense. It looks correct to me. I'm aggregating this by this, and that's the result. That's fine. Another thing is AI must never have write access, write operation access. You always want to double check with the user before actually sending some posts or puts or delete requests to server. I have here a somewhat artificial example, like I can write to a Flex AI and say something like, I don't like this dashboard, and it will suddenly decide that I want to remove it, even though it might not be my initial like idea behind it. I'm just saying that I don't like it. So I would very much prefer that it confirms it with me before doing it. And if we don't, you know, this is a very easy path to some future that we don't want to see here. The second takeaway is divide and conquer. And basically, what I'm trying to say here is one huge Flex AI chatbot that has everything in it is a nice thing, but it's a gimmick. It's like Apple Vision Pro, you know. You put it on, you play with it a little bit, and then you get tired of the wait, and you probably will not use it every day. It is something that you can play with, you can brag about with your friends that, hey, I have this nice tool. I built this Flex AI, or I have a Vision Pro, but really, are you going to be using it every day? Instead, what you want to do is you want to integrate this into the tool that your user is actually using every day. I have here our dashboard editor in a somewhat weird state because I opened some extra dialogues, but never mind that. And you can imagine that OpenAI can easily suggest the title for the dashboard if you already created the text, the insights in here, because it can read what kind of insights are there and it can generate some title. The same way it can suggest some filters that make sense for this particular dashboard, or suggest a description of the insight, and so on and so on. So instead of having one huge chatbot that most people will probably never use, we should focus on integrating tools into our application, into the workflows of the users and the way how they do it. And that's pretty much it from me. If you have any questions, we have, I think, a few minutes left. So go ahead. If not, then just ask on Slido and we can talk about this later.
And there is one more thing I would like to add to in this presentation. If I'm not mistaken, this chatbot Flex AI is part of our labs environment, right? So you can register to our labs environment and try it out yourself. The only thing you need is bring your own OpenAPI token.
So the first question was, why do you use OpenAI and not open source LLM? Well, we are going to introduce also option to use open source LLM alongside with OpenAI. And what we're planning to do is to kind of separate the to use RAG and other non-OpenAI APIs to enrich the content, enrich the prompt for the LLM with our data, and this will allow us to not use OpenAI, but pretty much use any LLM as a drop-in replacement. It's just that for POC, it was so super easy to use OpenAI. It has a very nice REST APIs, and it's just no-brainer. If you need just a POC to see what is possible, then OpenAI is the best tool for that. Yeah, so behind that is pretty much an open source Python library, so you can build it quite easily. It's not all that complicated, and the text that you have there generated is actually generated by OpenAI based on the data generated by Python script. So in theory, it's pretty easy to implement this on your own for POC, for again, for testing things out. If you want this particular thing that we did, of course, when we are going to be productizing, we will consider whether we want to include it as a part of our REST API so that you can just grab it from our system. But this is still up for decision. All right. Andy, on top of the product, are there any performance concerns in making those OpenAI calls that you've experienced? Well, first of all, about performance, yes, OpenAI is not that fast, especially if you are using GPT-4 and not GPT-4 Turbo, which is a little bit faster. But there are some ways to work around it. You can enable, how does it call? What's it called? Basically streaming, when it's sending you tokens as soon as it gets the token ready. So you're not waiting for a complete text. Instead, you're receiving those like over WebSockets there. And yeah, that's pretty much answered the question. Andy, is any of your work on integrating LLM into the GoodData product available on GitHub so I can get inspired? Not at the moment. Not at the moment, but we already have this question asked by our customers who are trying out Flex AI in lab environment, which I also recommend you to try out. And we are considering whether we should open source some part of it so that they can get inspired by it, because they are building their own AI chats on top of OpenAI, and they are interested how can they reuse our stuff that we already created, our functions, in their own application. So yeah, we are considering about that. Maybe leave anonymous, please leave your calling card, and I will reach out if this happens. Okay, about using AI for clustering data in a 2D scatterplot, aren't there better and robust algorithms for clustering that don't include LLMs? I wasn't the one developing this, so maybe you can, you were showing this, but you were also not developing. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that we are using LLM for clustering. There is a Python script behind the scenes that that is creating this clustering and running them. We also integrated it through Jupyter Notebooks. So behind the things, it's like running a Python code, generates the clustering, and then we are just showing it on the UI, and we add annotations generated by OpenAI on top of some of this machine learning things that we are doing outside of LLM. Are there any OSS initiatives driven by GoodData? Well, there is nothing like widely adopted that you might know, probably, unless you're our customer, but we do open source some of our client libraries, like UI SDK, basically the library that we are using to build our own UI, all the components there and all the visualizations. We open source it because our customers are using it to embed our analytics into their apps. We also have Python SDK, which is open sourced. And again, this is just a wrapper around our REST API written in Python, and it also has some support for pandas and some more stuff around that. So if you are a customer of GoodData, yes. If you're not, then probably there is nothing that would interest you too much. We are also open sourcing most of our demos. So if we're building some demo to showcase a specific scenario, it's usually available on GitHub, and you can use that. Do you use a fine-tuned OpenAI model or the default? We are using default. We were considering to fine-tune model, but there is a problem that when you fine-tune the model with some very specific context, let's say you have a list of database tables, and inside of database tables, you have a list of available columns, and that information is very specific. You cannot just figure out that ID looks something like this. You need to know exactly what ID is. And when you fine-tune this information into OpenAI model, it gets fuzzy. So it might know that, yeah, we are working with a database, there are some tables, but it can forget specific IDs. And for that reason, we are not doing that. Instead, we are putting all our important information into the first system prompt that we send to OpenAI. All right. So if there are no more questions, then back to Honza.
Thank you, Andy.